have to be mindful of that. Let's move on to this activity though, which is number 41, on page 41. Okay, I gave you already some need statements, and they're in your packet. So they are, sorry Travis, I'm gonna jump right in here. Okay. So we have this handout of 10 need statements.
Yes.
I'm going to go through a couple with you. I don't think we're going to do all of these, but we are going to identify a couple of them. This is a part where people really like to overcomplicate things, especially people like me who like to add extra words into everything. And so it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be really, really simple. If you look at the first one on this handout, you see individuals need transportation to get to work. So that's a family level need that was identified, okay? So your outcome language is individuals acquire transportation. Okay, your need there is transportation, individuals get it. So basically, instead of need, you say acquire, have access to, okay?
What, would it only directly answer the need, or could one of the outcomes be an increased number of employment because of having?
Right, that's where I was going with it, was like,
See, again, you're overcomplicating.
you make it to work, you get your paycheck.
Right, exactly. But the need that we've articulated is not that people need to get to work in order to receive a paycheck.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
they just
They need
need to
transportation.
physically get there, you
So now
know?
they have
So it's just the
transportation,
physical
whether
act of
public or
getting there,
private,
All right.
They get
Yeah.
transportation.
okay?
I don't agree.
So families need healthcare, the
Feel like
outcome is
that's-
families achieve healthcare.
Right.
Families
We asked
healthcare.
people.
Yep, exactly.
Remember, we asked people, what's your problem? And they said, I don't have a
And
car.
what we'll, as we move on, we'll see that sometimes you can have a need and you can have multiple outcomes
That's a root
within
cause.
that,
That's
and
the
that
5
totally
whys.
happens.
Yeah.
Right now, we're just keeping it at that real
Very
simple
basic.
level
Yes,
of, you know what, this is what our need is, this is what our outcome statement is. So let's
Yep.
look at number 6. Individuals need skills to prepare them for living wage jobs. Anybody?
Individuals
Individuals.
acquire skills to prepare them for a living wage job.
Got it, nailed it. So it's really, you
Not
know, it's
got
just
job
a,
training
that's
or
the
anything?
outcome
Yeah.
language that we have, okay?
Wow.
They don't need to acquire.
So with this, you know, we can go through, maybe let's do a couple more
I said
examples.
individuals
How about number 9? Families report food insecurity at least once a month. Families increase food security,
I
okay?
missed that one.
Security, scarcity.
Oh, there it is,
Increased
scarcity.
food scarcity.
Scarcity.
They increased food
That's why families
scarcity.
report
Oh, I
food
don't have,
scarcity.
that's not what mine
Decrease.
says,
No.
but,
Families
Oh.
report food scarcity at least once.
okay,
So families don't report food scarcity.
yeah. So they have an
Families
increase
Families
of
stop
food
reporting.
available.
Let's see.
Families
Families
stop
are, yeah,
reporting
so-
food scarcity.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean
That doesn't mean that they got the
food.
food that they.
Yeah, yeah, not
Means they stop
necessarily,
reporting.
so.
Yeah, well.
It's like
Okay.
people don't report that
Sorry,
they're
we're getting-
looking for employment.
It's okay.
But they're still.
It's interactive.
So what we want
Yeah.
to do right now is look at this activity on page number 41. So we want to get one outcome that reinforces our need that we identified, okay? So
What
what we
level of
said was
outcome?
families lack access to affordable housing. That's the need that was articulated in an earlier module. What might be an outcome statement that would be appropriate to address this need?
Families achieve
Affordable
access to affordable
becomes
housing.
available.
Or gain
Acquire.
Gain
access.
access, acquire, yeah, those are all good
So
words.
families have access to affordable
There you go,
housing, does
families
that?
have access, yeah.
Acquire
Okay.
and synonyms.
I was gonna say, synonyms, yeah.
How do we feel about that? Families have access to affordable housing.
I mean, I feel like
It
that's-
seems like it needs to be quantitative, but that's,
But that's, we have so many columns. We have
so
much
says
more
the
of our
fiscal
workbook.
person.
I think
The
it's.
problem
Can you-
is,
I don't believe you.
is that there was a lack of
it's
access. So the solution is that well, there's now access.
There's now
It's pretty
access.
simple,
Yep,
so.
yep, families have access to
I mean,
affordable
we're just saying
housing.
what the outcome is, we don't know how to get
Right.
there.
Affordable housing becomes available?
Again, trying to complicate it, too many words.
Yeah.
We could do it that way, but it just.
That's
it would
more
just be extra
community.
words.
Yeah.
At some point, we
That
won't-
feels
You know,
community.
but that's right,
It's a
that's,
piece.
Right.
that's an outcome that would be accomplished at the same level, and that's really what we're looking for right now, is
Right.
having that consistency with it, so there's lots of different ways that we could probably phrase it, but ultimately, our number one thing is making sure that we're staying at this family level, which is what our logic model is being built off of, what our needs statement has been articulated to say, okay?
Huh, okay.
So with that, at such point when I'm able to tactfully pull that off and put it on the wall, we'll put that next to the need statement that we've already identified, okay? So this is the third column that's right here. So notice that we've skipped a column, and we've skipped this column because we are results oriented. That is what we want to do, is produce results. We want to identify our outcome after we've identified our need, and we know that we have a mission statement that's solid. So let's go over the key points. We know that identifying outcomes is the first step in strategic planning. This is huge. We have to know what we're working towards. We know that legislation has told us that good planning is important. It's also the right way to do it. We know from Drucker that Drucker assessment, his workbook can be used to help reinforce the basic foundation of the Roma principles, just in terms of, you know, what are our results. Outcomes for community action are on 3 levels that we've pounded in throughout the day and will continue to do as we move forward. There are many different outcomes for the 6 national goals, so we can have lots of different outcomes for one goal that's been identified. That's totally cool. Each domain, such as employment, can have multiple levels of outcomes. So you can have different levels of outcomes within each domain, whether that's family, agency, or community, okay? So now we're gonna start thinking about planning by discussing the selection of strategies and services. So we've done assessment, we're working on planning right now, and remember, this is the module that we had to break up into 2 sections. And so this is the last module that we'll have before we break for lunch. I appreciate your enthusiasm as we cruise through this
3
morning.
minutes behind.
3 minutes behind
3
right
minutes
now?
behind.
Okay.
We are 42.
Hey, we're focusing, okay. So what we want to do right now is module number 3. We can revisit those learning objectives. It's the last 4 learning objectives. So module number 3 in this part B is going to be, it starts off on page 42 for you guys. I'll read the learning objectives, which are: participants understand the difference between outcomes and outputs. Participants learn the difference between provision of services and strategic thinking as methods for identifying strategies for your agency. Participants understand the use of proxy outcomes, which is outputs that stand in lieu of outcomes. Participants understand the importance of selecting strategies and services to be delivered by your agency that match identified community needs, resources, and desired outcomes. Get a strategy or a plan that's gonna match that, okay? I love this section, so I'm gonna get really animated right now, and it's gonna be exciting. So just wait. So, okay, again, we're starting off on page 42. We have an additional learning objective, which I didn't cover, which is that we're gonna consider, again, going back to those assumptions, we're gonna talk about some of the assumptions with the services and strategies that we develop and implement. So, what we want to do right now is make sure that we're connecting our need, our outcomes, and our strategies. So far, we've learned that the mission statement is the foundation from which we build, and we've identified what needs are, and then we've been able to identify some outcomes. But what we have to be able to do is take that information and put it together to select some strategies for how to achieve the results that we're seeking. Okay, so when we look at this here, we see a plan developed by this group. It says, we have to add some more detail to our plan. And so they say CAA, that's Community Action Agency, which we're CAP, whatever, it's the same, you know, it's kind of, yeah. So Community Action Agency, we are a Community Action Agency. So the plan is get the funds, abracadabra, presto, and then the outcome is reduce poverty. So we have some steps that are really critical that we're missing there, and so we propose that this is not the way to go about doing it. We want to think about our expected results first. Again, we skipped over column number 2 because we want to go to outcomes, which is, you know, synonymous with results. So we want to think about our results first, and then we want to be able to build our plan. So how do we know if what we do supports the outcomes that we want to achieve?
We see, does it help families have access to affordable housing?
Exactly. And
We
make
ask the
that
question.
connection. Yep,
Yep.
we ask questions, we make connections. We
Okay.
make that connections that show that as a result of me doing this, this is what occurred, okay? So with that, on page number 43 is maybe my favorite page in the manual. So this is the part where when I was doing my initial certification, the trainer who watched me afterwards said, the flip side of passion is scary. So I got really animated with it because it's really cool stuff. It's really cool to think about. Here we get this idea that we are more than just service providers. How we deliver our services impact how much change we can accomplish. Okay? Can somebody read that first paragraph, please?
The agency considers its actions with its available resources targeted to achieving the identified outcomes for its families, communities, or the agency. Will it be a self-provider, self-sufficiency, anti-poverty agent, or both?
Exactly. Are we just gonna be a service provider? Or are we gonna be something that's an agent for the anti-poverty cause, which is what we grew out of in 1964 with our mission and our purpose to be an anti-poverty network? Okay? So, we are results oriented in our paradigm. And so we have to understand the importance of strategic thinking. Okay? So, we have to think about the difference between simply providing a service and working on long-term change, okay? The provision of service model is that agencies that are organized to meet specific short-term, or to meet specific short-term services such as like emergency services, weatherization falls into this. And the challenge is that being able to identify long-term change in those customers' lives is really kind of hard, okay? And we see that same with what Sean does, you know? You're going in there and you're giving a service, but then, you know, it's hard to see that long-term change as a result of the rental assistance that's provided. So failure to link the activities together to form a comprehensive set of services then makes it difficult for us to be able to be super effective. It actually reduces our effectiveness if we're not able to say that, you know what, yeah, you were able to help out with somebody getting into a house, but in addition to that, they were getting some awesome supportive services through employment and training that helped them cultivate skills to get a better job. And in that process, as part of the bridge, weatherization helps out to help offset some of those costs. So we look at the provision of service model as kind of like a singular, like, here you go, here, you know, we provided this service. But what we want is to think of something that's a little bit more holistic. We want to think about how we bundle things to make the most long-lasting impact. And we do that because we want to make sure that we're impacting change, but also because it's really the most fiscally prudent way to do it. That if you change one aspect of somebody's life or their condition by providing rental assistance, but they don't have the other supports that they need for long-term success, like through employment and training, that could be considered just kind of a waste of money. We want to make sure that the people that we serve have the tools that they need for the long-term success that our agency is really in charge of trying to promote. Cool? So sometimes there are unintended consequences too for just this provision of services. You know, people wind up, I mean, sometimes it prevents people from taking action. And we see that. We have conversations like that all the time where it's like, you know, are we preventing people from having to stand on their own two legs and come up with a total month's rent by being there as that safety net? You know, that's always a balance that we have of, are we enabling, you know, the continuance of some dependence on a system, or are we giving people the tools that they need to be independent as they move forward? So the strategic thinking model is so cool. So it's this holistic strategic approach, and it really reinforces that primary mission of CSBG, which is to reduce poverty, okay? And so with the strategic model, the strategic thinking model, we think about bundling services, okay? So we're gonna combine different services in order to optimize our outcomes with the things that we provide. What has been proven, the Annie E. Casey Foundation did a study, and people who have that strategic thinking or the bundling of services and, very intentional coupling of different services are 3 to 4 times more likely to achieve a major economic success than people who just have provision of services. So I think it's a critical piece there, because what we see is that long-term impact, which is what we want. We want to have outcomes that are measured in changed lives, improved communities, are strengthened when we combine the services that we provide. So in addition to providing direct services, we have to be able to look at that community engagement too. So it might be, we can in-house offer these services, but it's only with the benefit of Sunburst Mental Health coming in and providing some case management to navigate other systems outside that people are really able to achieve that economic success that we talk about. So we talk about things that are strategic and bundling in-house, as well as looking at those collaborative partnerships to promote that change and work towards the outcomes that we identify. So we strengthen our partnerships so that we can make sure that these needs we identify, because these are needs within our community, are ones that, we're all better equipped to solve as a result of where we're putting our efforts. Do you guys understand why that's the coolest section ever? It's just, I think from a philosophical perspective, looking at that idea of coupling our efforts, and we see more and more of that at Community Action. We have an increased focus in cross-training and making sure that we're having those conversations within departments, so that there's an increase in the recognition that collectively we make the change that we want to see. And so I just think that it's really, really awesome.
Are most of our departments strategically bundling with other departments? Like, for example, your rental assistance, is there other departments that strategically bundle with that?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
And another
Section 8, yeah.
agency too,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I have a question, LEAP, what do we touch, 1,300 people or whatever on that list?
4,000?
4,000? And I see all families, and I see all the checks going out every single week. Is there a bundling there? That seems to be the highest quantity.
So they would be
Of
one that we
face-to-face.
bundled with, so.
Oh.
So like,
Yeah,
I
but
would
the other
recommend
thing
all
with
of my
that-
clients to join
Got
the
it.
services that they utilize ours. or
That they
not.
might not know about.
And then
that-
energy share,
Yeah.
or is that, kind of goes in.
And, weatherization is part of what we do.
Of course, yeah, I see that.
Because it lowers
Sure.
cost overall.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
But that's the big dog, so that's.
Got
when
it.
gets-
So the other thing that we want to point out too
Yes.
is that with
Flagship,
LEAP, there's some presumptive eligibility pieces too, where somebody submits an application, and if they already have food stamps, then, that's a bundling. That's
It
a
is,
bundling
right.
with an external resources.
Right.
People who are receiving food stamps are getting support in that way, and so those are different ways that we can do it.
Got it.
And that's a state mandate, I believe, the
Mhm.
SNAP.
Yep, yeah.
I
But-
see.
So,
But if we see somebody and they're not on SNAP, we can often tell them, hey, if you're on SNAP already, or say they are, we could say, you can get a discount at this place for being on
Right.
SNAP or for having LEAP.
So outside the agency too, it's
Yeah,
strategic.
community partners that we talk
Yes,
about.
yes, awesome.
okay, we're gonna cruise forward because we are 3 minutes behind schedule, and I'm wanting for us to be able to, that's okay. I didn't think we were gonna have a lunch break today because of our abbreviated, it's
You're
usually
doing-
about
Whoa.
an 8-hour
Lots of
meeting.
time. You're doing it.
So we
Step
have
back.
40 minutes that we can play, I know, watch out. So, what we're gonna do right now is an activity, and this activity isn't one that you're gonna find within your participant manual. So I'm gonna read to you the directions of it, and we're gonna talk some about identifying the assumptions behind the services or strategies that we develop, because again, we don't want to be giving those assumptions, unintended assumptions out there. So we've looked at the assumptions with mission statements, we've looked at assumptions behind the selection of services and strategies. That's what we're doing right now, okay? So I have these 3 examples that are written there, and I'm going to lead the discussion about each of these scenarios. So this scenario number 1, provide budget counseling for people deeply in debt. Can we identify some assumptions behind that?
That providing the counseling will help them lower their debt.
Or they're not already budgeting.
Okay,
Or
people
that
are
that's their
deeply in
problem.
debt, yeah, that
Don't
only
know how to
people
budget.
that are deeply in debt
Yeah.
need the counseling or budget counseling,
exactly.
instead of 18-year-olds.